You strike it, it lights, you barely register that it happened. A single, instant flame, on demand, from an object smaller than your finger. For most of human history, that was not remotely possible. Starting a fire meant flint and steel, sparks, patience, and a fair amount of luck. The match changed that so completely that within a generation, people forgot fire had ever been difficult. What most people don't know is that the same chemistry that made this convenience possible also caused one of the strangest, most specific industrial diseases in medical history, one that rotted away the jawbones of the people who made the object, from the inside out. The breakthrough came in 1826, in a small pharmacy in Stockton-on-Tees, England. A chemist named John Walker was mixing a paste for a completely unrelated experiment when he scraped a coated stick against the hearth to clean it off, and it burst into flame. Walker refined the formula: antimony sulfide, potassium chlorate, gum, coated onto sulfur-tipped wooden splints, and began selling his friction lights the following spring. He never patented the idea. Other chemists, most notably a London seller named Samuel Jones, copied and improved it almost immediately, and within a few years these matches were being sold across Britain under a name that stuck: Lucifers. They worked, but they were unreliable, smoky, and could ignite unpredictably in your pocket. Manufacturers wanted something more consistent, and within a few years they found it: white phosphorus. Add it to the match head, and you got a match that would strike reliably on almost any rough surface, every time. It was, by every practical measure, a better match. It was also quietly poisoning the people who made it. White phosphorus vapor, breathed in day after day in poorly ventilated factories, attacks the jawbone specifically. The first documented case appeared in Vienna in the late 1830s. A young matchworker, examined by a physician named Lawrencer, who identified toothache and gum swelling as the early signs of something far worse. Left unchecked, the exposure caused the jawbone itself to die from the inside, a condition workers and doctors came to call, bluntly, phossy jaw. In advanced cases, the affected gums and tissue were reported to show a faint greenish-white glow in the dark. Treatment meant surgical removal of the jaw. Estimates from the period suggest that as many as 1 in 5 who developed the condition died from it. This wasn't a secret. Match manufacturers knew. The most notorious case involved the London firm Bryant May, where by the 1880s the human cost had become impossible to ignore. In 1888, social reformer Annie Besant published an exposé of the conditions inside the factory, and the women working there went on strike, one of the largest and most visible labor actions by women in Victorian Britain. Workers who complained of toothache were reportedly told to have the tooth pulled immediately or lose their job, a policy that, in hindsight, treated an early warning sign of a fatal disease as an inconvenience to be silenced rather than investigated. The strike didn't end the use of white phosphorus on its own, but a few years later, the Salvation Army's founder, William Booth, opened his own match factory using only the safer red phosphorus, selling boxes under the pointed slogan, "Lights in Darkest England," a direct public challenge to every competitor still using the dangerous version. Between public pressure and moral competition, the danger had become impossible to pretend away. The actual fix had already existed for decades. It just hadn't caught on. In 1844, a Swedish chemistry professor named Gustaf Erik Pasch patented an entirely different approach to the match. Instead of putting the dangerous chemical in the match head itself, where it burned everyone who breathed near it, Pasch moved it onto a separate striking surface, using red phosphorus instead. Later advances in producing red phosphorus made that safer chemistry practical on an industrial scale. Pasch's version was too expensive to manufacture at scale, and it failed commercially. It took two Swedish brothers, Johann Edvard and Carl Franz Lundström, to make the idea actually work. They refined the production process at their factory in Jönköping, and in 1855 their safety matches won a medal at the World Exposition in Paris. Even then, adoption was slow. The design didn't become genuinely well known worldwide until around 1868, nearly a quarter century after Pasch's original patent. If you find stories like this genuinely interesting, it's worth sticking around and subscribing. There's usually a new one within the week. Knowing the fix existed didn't make white phosphorus disappear. It was cheaper, and old industrial habits are stubborn. Change came country by country and slowly. Finland banned white phosphorus matches in 1872. Denmark followed in 1874. France in 1897. In 1906, 7 countries, Germany, Denmark, France, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and Switzerland, signed an international treaty in the city of Berne, formally prohibiting the manufacture, import, and sale of white phosphorus matches. Britain notably refused to sign it. The government eventually passed its own domestic law in 1908, which finally took effect in January of 1910. Not because it joined the international treaty, but because its own match manufacturers, facing competition from banned imports, asked for the restriction themselves. The scale of the problem right before the ban is telling. In 1907 alone, Britain imported an estimated 10 million gross of matchboxes, and by the most conservative reading, roughly 4 million gross of those still used white phosphorus. Canada, for its part, didn't ban the substance until 1914. By then, the object itself had already quietly won the argument. The standard safety match you'd pick up today still runs on the basic principle Pasch patented in 1844. Keep the reactive ingredients separated between the match head and the box's striking surface, greatly reducing the hazards that came with the old white phosphorus design. Strike anywhere matches, the other common type, work differently, a more reactive compound built directly into the match head, but they only exist safely today because the old white phosphorus danger was solved and regulated out of the ingredient list generations ago. Nobody buying a box of matches today thinks about phossy jaw, or a Swedish chemistry professor, or a treaty signed in a Swiss city in 1906. The object is too small, too cheap, too instant, for any of that history to survive contact with ordinary use. But the reason it's safe to strike is not an accident. It's the settled result of a documented disease, a labor strike, a chemist's patent, and a piece of international law, compressed into a stick of wood you'll use once and throw away without a second thought.